Just a quick note before we begin this week's episode. If you're looking to stay up to date on news, events, updates in the glamping industry, please visit AmericanGlampingAssociation.net and hit subscribe. And stay tuned for more episodes in the American Glamping Association podcast as we interview and talk to industry leaders, operators, manufacturers, and learn more about their organization, their perspectives, and the stories that help shape their success.
And then the other thing I think that you didn't mention that I've been thinking a lot about is everyone's been confined to their house. Who wants to then take that and have that next experience be in a hotel? I think that everyone's got a yearning to, like, I'm sitting here in my office in Denver and I'm looking out the window and it's supposed to be 28 degrees and snowing on Sunday, but it's 60 today and there's a peach tree outside my window that's got these gorgeous pink blossoms and leaves are coming out, and I'm just sitting in my house going, I only want more of that. You
Right.
know, I'm not looking to be in a hotel anytime soon. So, you know, I think your claim makes sense. You know, how we validate that will be, you know, remains to be seen, right?
On this week's episode, we are joined by Marty Coover, a partner of DHR International, Jobplex, an advisor with the American Glamping Association, and a partner with GLAT USA Glamping Structures. We'll explore some of the concepts that are relevant to the employers and the job seekers of today in a climate that is, let's face it, complicated at best. So during this time, though, as an industry, I believe that we owe it to ourselves to explore the good, the bad, and the complicated, and prepare ourselves to ask maybe one basic question. How do we prepare our business and ourselves for what happens after the dust settles? Take a listen. Welcome everybody to the show. My name is Ruben Martinez. I'm your host for today, and I am joined by Martin, aka Marty Coover, partner at DHR International Jobplex, an advisor for the American Glamping Association, and a partner in GLAT USA, a glamping structure manufacturer here in the United States. Welcome to the show, Marty.
Hey, glad to be here.
Marty, we have known each other for quite some time, and since the beginning, we have been told that we have a face for podcasts. So I'm glad to see that we're finally hitting our medium of choice.
Yeah, and I would add that the quarantine status and the stay-at-home orders have only increased my my face for podcasts and radio.
Well, you know, at this point in time, hopefully our podcast careers will just continue, and people don't have to continue to use video as much. But
yeah, so what I love about the medium is you don't no showers required.
Yeah, and who knows who's wearing pants?
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, thanks for taking the time. Wanted to pick your brain today, and we appreciate your time today. We're going to pepper you with a bunch of questions and get your perspective. The good thing about this show is nobody has to be right, and love to hear your perspective on some of these items. But before we dive into all of that fun stuff, I wanted to get have an opportunity for the listeners to learn just a little bit more about yourself and the path that you took to Denver. Wasn't necessarily a straight line, but as you grew up from a wee little lad in the Chicago area all the way to where you are now, Denver, just wanted to hear a little bit more information about how you got there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we, my wife and kids and I have been in the Denver area for about the last 8 years. But prior to that, we spent a couple of years living and working down in Quito, Ecuador. And that was a stint that's kind of representative of our passion for travel, our passion for kind of getting off the grid and finding new and different adventures, and just, alternative travel and alternative hospitality. And that was a big adventure for us, certainly working and living in another country, learning another language. And certainly coming to Colorado, not only aligned with that type of lifestyle and culture, it is also where my wife made me move. So we've been here about 8 years. As you said, I'm originally from Chicago, but moved around quite a bit. And I think that that's probably another thing that's informed just, where our passions and hobbies lie. I grew up in a big Irish family in Chicago, moved to St. Louis on a couple different occasions after school, and actually getting a degree in secondary education. I put my teaching career on hold and actually moved to rural Ireland for a while, where I worked some odd jobs. I drove a tractor, and I think I worked some local sport camps and things like that. And, ever since then, that was 18, 19 years ago, even if it's not professionally, our personal interest in travels have aligned that way, that, we are always seeking that adventure, that connection with a different culture, a different environment. And so, after Ireland, Chicago for about 8 or 9 years again, Ecuador, as I said, and then now we've been in Colorado for the last 8 years. And for the last 8 years, I've been a partner with an executive search firm. And for those of you that don't know what executive search is, we are retained by companies and organizations to go out and recruit hard to find passive talent at all levels of an organization. So whether it be a C-level CEO, CMO, CFO, CRO type position, down to we have solutions for project recruitment across all different industries and verticals. DHR is the fifth biggest search firm in the world. And so I've been there again for the better part of the last 7 or 8 years.
I'm curious. Let's get back to the tractor here. After you left your passive tractor career in Ireland, have you had a chance to brush up on your skills there, or was that kind of a one and done? And what can we do to get you back in the seat?
Well, that's fair. I'm always open. I can't say that I've had the opportunity or the experience or the chance to relive that experience. I have not had any tractor driving experience since then, outside of operating my parents' riding lawnmower probably 12 to 14 years ago. That said, fun fact, my older brother drove a Zamboni for about 5 or 6 years. So he may have more of the technical acumen to get behind the wheel. But no, I have not, and always open to the opportunity to get back on the track.
Well, for any listeners out there who can make Marty's dream come true of getting back in the saddle, please let us know. That way we can test his skills.
It should be noted that this tractor did not have a color because it was comprised mostly of rust and appeared to have been manufactured sometime in the mid 40s or 50s. And this would have been driven in the late 90s, early 2000s in a very small town in Ireland. So I don't know if I can handle this new technology.
Well, let's get you an upgrade. We're gonna work on getting you an upgrade. So it looks like you're pretty active, obviously, now in the glamping industry. But is this something, in your travels in Ecuador, kind of travels around the United States? Did you have much exposure to that type of traveling growing up, or your travels in Ecuador, or is that just something that has you've been participating or active in the last few years?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I would say that my introduction to glamping as an industry now probably came very similarly to the way it's come to a lot of other individuals. Just an interest in camping, an interest in the outdoors. We spent our summers as a kid. We'd go up to Door County in Wisconsin and we'd camp. We'd go to the Warren Dunes in Michigan and we camp. But it was Midwestern camping. And so, as we got older, we would often go to locations and accommodations that brought out that similar experience. I'm not sure that we even knew to call it glamping then, but it's always been something that, when we lived in Ecuador, we'd spend a lot of times going into these super rustic hotels with huts and cabins and rooms around these hot springs. We would go to, kind of these working farm hostels outside of these volcanoes, and things like that. And so as I got more and more entrenched in the world of executive search, I was doing it, really, I've done it across a lot of different industries and functions, including hospitality. And, I just got introduced to more and more of the investors and the people that were doing work in the space. And so now it's become, yes, a professional interest, but I think that, glamping is an amalgamation of two words, obviously, that didn't exist before. So I think a lot of us did it or had the experience or were putting it all together, but just didn't know what to call it.
Gotcha. Well, let's kind of jump into, your role now in executive search, and obviously with everything going on and those listeners right now, we are recording in the middle of the COVID-19 crisis. And so, the reason that we thought it'd be beneficial to have a conversation with Marty is his expertise in kind of the careers and executive search sector. And so there's not necessarily an industry right now that's not taking a hit. And there's not really a business that hasn't had to adapt and struggle and that's been smooth sailing. So with that in mind, and everything that within all your interactions with the various employers and job seekers all over the United States and worldwide, what should employers really be doing now? I think that's a question that we get because there's not really a guidebook. This hasn't really happened. Something like this hasn't really happened this way. So there's not really a guidebook to go off of, and they're not hiring. They're most employers aren't hiring at the moment. They're trying to figure out how to position themselves over the next few days, weeks, months. But from your perspective, is there anything that employers should be doing, and specifically, in hospitality?
Yeah, there's a lot of that's a lot to unpack. What I would say is that what I've seen amongst a pretty broad industry of a pretty broad base of industries and clients is that everyone is trying to find, you mentioned the playbook or the guidebook, and everyone's trying to find analogous experiences so that we can look at history, see the way that things have performed, and then draw some conclusions, and then make the appropriate plans to come out of this and weather the storm. And that's everything from 9/11 to the Great Recession to the oil crisis, the savings and loan crisis, the Great Depression. And the reality is there's just no one event or even an amalgamation of events that's comparable to this. And so, really when I check in with my clients, what I see is, the similar to the way that our news cycle right now feels like it's hour to hour, versus day to day or even week to week. The more time that passes, the more visibility they get into, what this is really going to look like, right? So preparing to make a decision March 31st versus preparing to make a decision April 31st is going to look a lot different because you're going to have a lot more information. And so really it's about, for most of the organizations that I've worked with, and look, unless you're manufacturing hand sanitizer or you're working in consumer goods and consumables manufacturing, you're taking it on the chin. I mean, even some companies that feel recession resilient or recession proof, whether it's software, there's going to be lagging indicators, a lagging effect that's going to take a pretty hefty toll. You need businesses and people to have money and to be established in order to consume services. And that's just the reality of what we're going through. And so I think everybody's is really, looking at that runway. What is that runway? And so what I've seen is that I've seen the companies and the organizations that have acted the quickest have ultimately put themselves in the best position to give themselves that runway, or to allow themselves to play that week to week, day to day, hour to hour game where they get more and more visibility. And so, look, I've never been through this before. My clients turn to me and they have questions around things. You mentioned the Glad USA partnership. Certainly we continue to engage developers and operators at various stages of launching glamping operations. And with that comes a lot of uncertainty, and they're at different stages of the process. Some have money, some don't have money, some have the land, some don't have the land. And so really what I'm seeing is cash on hand, having the money, having the appropriate runway, making quick, decisive decisions now that will allow you to still be around in 90 days so that you can actually take the new information that you've got. Now that's, and then make the appropriate plans. What I'm hearing a lot of people say now is create all the scenarios, right? Create the worst case scenario, create the what you expect scenario, create the best case scenario, try to reverse engineer it, put your runway up against it, and then work backwards to make sure that at the worst case scenario you're still in a position where you're bare bones, but you've got the ability to move forward with operating goals, whether that's 2021 or whether that's August, who knows. So I don't know if I got to all the points of your question there, because I know there was a few more.
No, and I guess as you talk about scenarios, something that seems to be consistent in some of our conversations is, even within those scenarios, one part of each one of those scenarios that makes employers, specifically in hospitality, feel nervous is the loss of talent, right? In many hospitality fields, especially outdoor, unique accommodations, the talent that they've found, that they've trained, that they've built, this relationship and loyalty to, it's not cheap, and it takes a long time. And I think there's a level of consistency across all industries, but that fear of losing key talent is something that seems to be kind of top of mind. Have you, in your experience, is there anything that employers and organizations are doing that's maybe unique, or something that they feel is going to work within those scenarios to maintain kind of key individuals and key talent?
Yeah, that's, and I think that as you look at hospitality, traditional hospitality and alternative hospitality, what ultimately sets a good hospitality experience apart from another is the human being, right? It's the service element of it. That human service and that human operation is such a huge part. It's the differentiating factor between experiences. And so the idea that not only do you have to lay off or furlough a lot of these people, but that you could lose long term these individuals is certainly frightening to a lot of people. Now, that said, that can't come, taking care of those individuals can't come over the top priority of just staying in existence and keeping your operation alive. So in terms of the way that the different companies are handling it, it's across the board. Some have circled the individuals that they know they need to have to make their operation run, and they've asked them to take pay cuts. They've asked them to take furloughs where they still provide the benefits, while maybe laying off other positions that ultimately just aren't as critical to the role of the experience. All of that said, it's harder in hospitality than it is in any other industry because of the just huge human capital component of what they do. And so I wouldn't say that anybody is doing anything tremendously innovative at this point where it's like, oh, we should all replicate that. I think that, look, the class organizations are always going to be class organizations. They're going to handle the treatment of their employees and human beings the best way that they can, and with tremendous class, and do everything they can to either keep them on board, or a lot of smaller businesses are laying those individuals off so that they can participate in unemployment while still maybe reaping some benefit from the stimulus.
Right. And you kind of hit on it earlier with this this idea of visibility, which it's a tough concept, right? Because like you said, there isn't a playbook for this that matches up perfectly. But from an employer's standpoint, and I understand that you may not have the crystal ball, the answer to this, and if you did, then there shouldn't be a reason that you would be on this podcast. You'd actually have your own briefing after the White House briefing every single day. But from your conversations, have employers or other organizations, do they have specific components and items that that they're looking to as those key indicators for visibility to start rehiring? Is there one in particular? Is there three? Because obviously there's a level of discomfort and unknown now that is leading to their their decision making. But when the dust settles and they start wanting to move their organizations forward, are there two or three indicators with what's going on now in general that they're looking towards? Or, and I know that's a big question, but want to get your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think everyone obviously is looking to Asia right now, right? Like everyone's looking for similar industries, similar benchmarks, similar models, in countries that have maybe been impacted a little bit ahead of our cycle. So even if that's a couple weeks, which they say Italy was, versus China obviously being a couple months. Now, those are just higher level macro indicators that people are going to be seeking, and they are, right? Everyone's got their eyes open to see what happens with retail. Like, Apple reopening all their locations in China was a big deal. I think a lot of retailers looked at that and said, okay, there's a scenario here with which we can reopen, and that we may have a path forward, albeit maybe a much more different path than we had originally thought. I think that the other indicators are, it really depends on the industry. So, you look at some of these healthcare services that aren't necessarily on the front lines of COVID, but are providing dermatology, fertility, ophthalmology, behavioral health, family, mental health services, things like that. I think they're all moving to online platforms and telehealth, and they're looking to see, what type of new patient engagement can they get in this environment, and what percentage that looks like, and how long can they keep afloat, and then what returning to normal looks like. For other industries, they're talking about movie theaters never really coming back because there's no way to. It's just 100% contingent on the stay-at-home orders and the directives of government being lifting the social distancing requirements. So, I think it varies depending on the industry. I think when I look at glamping, the things that I've seen and I've heard in conversations, and again, like you said, this is all guesswork, right? It's guesswork that then gets backed up by data as we get an hour a day, a week, a month more into this. But early returns suggest that people were still booking out, glamping and camping experiences, even as the stay-at-home orders were getting issued, and they weren't booking, stays in traditional hospitality. So that's a really good indicator for some of these smaller operators that have small sites that they can control, and they can control the contamination and the sanitization and the cleaning and the aesthetic and the experience. And the fact that even amongst this, people were seeking that removal and that outdoor experience, I think is going to be a huge indicator. That said, I think people are inventing new metrics every day. Right. I saw some Colorado technology companies creating, different KPIs and different metrics for kind of job seekers to job openings. And it's the whole world's flipped on its head. And you have to, the one thing I know is true from every webinar I've attended, from every client that I've talked to, from every glamping conversation that I've had in the last 3 months, is you have to immediately remove and throw out anything that you assumed to be true 2 months ago. And whether or not we go back to making those assumptions again is undetermined. And so, that's probably not a good answer to your question, but that's what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and now let's take a quick turn to the positive, because you kind of hinted at it earlier. But it's my opinion and my theory that when the dust settles, this outdoor travel, unique accommodations, glamping, camping is going to be one of the first fields within hospitality to bounce back for a few different reasons. One, I just think of myself and my family. We've been self-isolating. I know you have as well for what feels like 7.5 years, but it's been, weeks now. And as soon as families like ours get the green light to get outside and do something, we're not ready to go on a cruise ship. We're not ready to hop on a flight and go to Denver International Airport. And we're still not really ready to be in hotels where there's still a lot of people, for better or worse. So it's my theory that this type of travel is going to be the first to bounce back. And for the other reasons that people want to be outside, maybe not around a bunch of people, have a bit more fresh air, and the idea of it being hyper local too, where they can get in their car, drive an hour and a half, and be there. Your opinion on that is: do you think that's valid, or do you think I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs?
Well, if you said that you thought that was going to be done by August 1st, I'd say you're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but I think you're spot on, right? Like, I think that exactly. Well, and there's another thing in all of this, right, is that a lot of people are going to lose their jobs over the course, or a lot of people already have lost their jobs, and a lot of people are going to continue to lose their jobs over the course of the next couple of months. And that's really unfortunate. But one of the biggest drawbacks to that, and what we're going to be looking for as we restart our economy, is that people aren't going to have as much expendable income. And so, getting on a plane and going to Mexico, or getting on a plane and going to California, if you live in Wisconsin or Illinois, that's a lot of money. And then you've got to then spend even more money on the accommodation. And so people, as a whole, not everybody, but in general, there will likely be a pretty big period of just people having less expendable income. And so they're going to seek out alternative experiences. They're going to seek out experiences that might save them. The other thing I think about it, and it's going to, whether even it's just perception or reality, it's going to seem safer, to me anyway, to drive an hour into the woods and be 50 feet from the next tent or cabin and camp with your family there. Now, what I do think is going to have to be true is, I think that those operators are going to have to make some guarantee. Like, they're going to have to really make some, they're going to have to figure out a way to get credentialed in certain types of sanitizations, of cleanliness, and just being able to make claims and guarantees to families so that they feel safe. I think what you'll see first is just a really big return and surge into regular camping, just more traditional, bringing a tent, set it up, whether it's car camping or backpacking, which we were seeing anyway, right? We're seeing the surges in this stuff. And then the other thing I think that you didn't mention that I've been thinking a lot about is everyone's been confined to their house. Who wants to then take that and have that next experience be in a hotel? I think that everyone's got a yearning to, like, I'm sitting here in my office in Denver and I'm looking out the window, and it's supposed to be 28 degrees and snowing on Sunday, but it's 60 today, and there's a peach tree outside my window that's got these gorgeous pink blossoms, and leaves are coming out. And I'm just sitting in my house going, I only want more of that. I'm not looking to be in a hotel anytime soon. So, I think your claim makes sense. How we validate that will be, remains to be seen, right?
Well, you heard it first from Marty that everything's bouncing back by June 2020. So get that in writing. We got just a few more minutes here, and wanted to just spend a little bit of time talking about Glatt USA, kind of newer into the United States market, and just wanted to get your kind of rundown on what you're doing with them and what they're all about.
Sure. So Glatt USA is a partnership of four of us who are the existing founders right now. It's myself, and then a team that is mostly comprised of two brothers that have run very successful manufacturing businesses in their family for a very long time, actually out of Guadalajara, Mexico, but doing business across North America. And the common thing amongst all the four of us is just the passion for the outdoors and the passion for glamping, but also what we see is this real big market opportunity. And in January we saw it as a market opportunity, but we still see it as the same market opportunity now. Like I said, it just may be a little bit delayed, but really it was founded and driven out of some experiences that were less than optimal, spending a lot of money going to some of these glamping sites where There's restrooms and stoves and these canvas accommodations that are just, getting wind blown and rain blown and just not quite being, what we thought was worth the money. And so what they've created is a modular system that can be really easily manufactured to custom specifications, with bathrooms and big units, small units, tree houses, stuff for beachside climates, as well as all season mountain stuff with snow. But it can be built and assembled in a similar amount of time to some of these really nice high-end canvas tents. But it comes with a mixture of hard-sided and temperature-controlled comfort with the same kind of canvas and screen mosquito netting aesthetic that you're looking for when you go glamping. And so that's just the beginning of what we're trying to bring to market. We've been able to do so in Mexico initially, but now we've set up an organization to do so in the U.S. We've got a couple of projects that we're really high on that we're continuing to progress, and those operators have great investors who continue to be bullish on the market. And so we're pushing forward and really looking forward to what's to come in 2020 and 2021.
Awesome. Well, Marty, thank you so much for your time. For the listeners who want to learn a little bit more about how Marty's helping out with the association as an advisor, go to AmericanGlampingAssociation.net. And to learn more about GLAT USA, go to glatusa.com. Marty, always a pleasure. Stay safe and, enjoy the rest of your week.
Yeah, until the next virtual happy hour.
Sounds good. Tonight, right? Yeah, tonight.
Yeah. See you in a few.
All right. Thank you, Marty.
Yeah, take care.